Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Week 16 Waiver Wire Chat. I am Patrick Daugherty here with Kyle Dvorchak. We're going to get to all your waiver wire questions for the fantasy semifinals. Maybe it's your second week of the fantasy playoffs. Maybe it's your first week if you had one of those precious buys. Maybe it's your first week because your league only goes week 16 to 18. You know, everyone has different formats. Maybe your points only. Maybe you're not even in the playoffs. Maybe it's not a waivers question. We'll answer any questions that you guys have. Someone has a dynasty question right off the bat. We'll answer dynasty. I'll answer anything you can think of. Kyle, real quick, what is like the waiver wire lay of the land this week? It doesn't seem quite as dire as last week, but unsurprisingly, it's week 16. There aren't like killer apps popping up. Anyone really notable that you'd call a must-add this week, or no? How's it looking on the wire?
I'm going to say Noah Brown's probably a must-add. We don't know the status of Nico Collins. We do know that Tank Dell's on IR. He's not expected to return this year. And Noah Brown, assuming CJ Stroud comes back, even if Nico Collins comes back and Noah Brown is number two, the number two for CJ Stroud has produced fantasy numbers just automatic every single week this year. So he has the potential to be maybe a wide receiver 3 low end if Nico Collins returns. But if Nico Collins doesn't return, we're talking about probably a top 20, 24 fantasy wide receiver as CJ Stroud, the best rookie of the past 5 to 10 years. Top receiver, you kind of have to add that guy.
It is against the Browns, but I agree. I have Noah Brown right now as my number one receiver ad. That's kind of with or without Nico. My early gut is that CJ Stroud will be back.
Me too. It was a concussion. That's typically a 1 to 1.5 game absence. And he was doubtful, which is to say they at least left the light on for him. They knew it was unlikely, but they didn't rule him out last week. Yeah,
so he'll probably be back. No, Nico Collins, a different matter. He's had calf issues for like 2 months. They're 8-6, and they need to keep winning. But I get the feeling they might aim high and just try to get him as healthy as possible. Maybe hold him out one more week. I don't know. They could very easily force the issue too. Basically, Nico Collins, we have to wait until Wednesday. Receivers.
That's the deal with everyone is you have to wait until we find out about X because Josh Jacobs was technically questionable last week, but he did not practice at all. I have no clue what they're going to do with him this week. If he doesn't play, Zamir White's an RB2. If he does play, Zamir White is unplayable. Zach Moss supposedly trying to play through this shoulder injury, and also Jonathan Taylor maybe comes back. If hopefully, neither of them play,
we need JT back.
Buddy, no, you think you need JT back? No. I need JT back.
I can guarantee you need him worse than I do. Yes, I actually.
But if neither of them end up playing, Trey Sermon somehow becomes a potential league winner for week 16.
What about that other guy, Tyler Goodson or Goodison? Is it going to be
Tyler Goodson? Yeah, he didn't see much work. I mean, he didn't see nearly as much work. He would still probably be. It wouldn't even be a 1B situation would be my guess. My guess is he'd be strictly a backup. He'd see some touches, but we saw in this past game, Trey Sermon came in and immediately saw the bulk of the work. Wasn't every single touch. Goodson came in. He'd probably play some passing downs too. But Trey Sermon would be a top 24 back, I think, if neither Jonathan Taylor or Zach Moss plays, and only in that scenario.
Receiver has a few interesting options. Beyond Noah Brown, there's Josh Palmer. I would call him a must-add just because
probably
the targets are going to be there. Dontavian Wicks, a lot of injury balls in the air with the Packers receiver core, so you don't quite know what you'll be getting from Dontavian Wicks in Week 16. Rashid Shaheed's still out there. Demario Douglas probably can't have another 3-catch game. He'll probably go at least 5 or 6, I bet, in Week 16. Running back real quick, we're starting to get some questions rolling in here. Would you consider Justice Hill a must-add or not really?
Not a must-add. He's certainly worth a stash, but you don't have the confidence to play him in this coming week unless you suffered multiple running back injuries. And even then, I doubt he's more than a pure, satellite back, breather back type of guy. I mean, on a good offense, maybe that gets him into the end zone, but you're not banking on that. If you're in the fantasy playoffs, your roster is probably strong enough to not need to play that guy.
So for the first question, playing into a little bit of what we're talking about here, Lindorfin's weekly viewer. Thank you so much, Lindorf. I guess we should say this is going to be the last chat. We think next Monday is Christmas. The following Monday, we're going to be watching the college football playoff New Year's Day. It's probably it. So we want to thank you for joining us.
As a Buckeyes fan, I am abstaining.
Yeah, you should. You need to. As a Mizzou fan, I'm wishing it was the 12-team playoff year. We would have made the playoff for the first and only time in our program history. Because I'm assuming we'll be outside.
Oh, wait, we play you, right?
You
We're gonna
do.
smoke you?
You were 7-point favorites. Now you're 3-point dogs. Because
We've had a bunch of opt-outs, right?
Yeah,
I assume Marvin Harrison opted out. We had Kyle McCord transfer. But a Mega Buka, I hope I said his name right, has decided to play, and he's dropping 300 on your heads, I assume?
Yeah, so you guys aren't trying, really. We're going to see. It's like the biggest game in recent Mizzou history. So we'll be texting during that game. But Lindorphins, if Nico goes, are we ranking him ahead of Rashee Rice? Nico Collins, he's going to be one of those players everyone all week's asking about, I'm assuming.
He definitely will be. And I would say if we hadn't gotten these past 2 weeks, I'd say yes, because Nico, when he plays, he is the number one receiver for CJ Stroud. That guy is going to get a lot of production. However, Rashee Rice in the past 2 to 3 weeks has truly separated himself as an 80 to 90% route rate player who is very good, who plays with Patrick Mahomes. Like, that guy's a top 15 fantasy receiver. I don't know where you're going to have him ranked this week. I think he's a player who we could undersell just how valuable his role is, given that he's a full-time 80 to 90% routes player and is good. I cannot stress this enough. We've had these guys before where, Juju runs all the routes, MVS runs all the routes. These guys are not good. And Rashee Rice is really good, and he runs all the routes. Like, if you tell me he closes out the final 2 months of the fantasy season as the wide receiver 7, I believe it. Because right now, he's probably like the wide receiver 7. That's probably where he is right now and over the past 4 weeks. So Rice, because we really should be ranking him as higher than you think, frankly.
Yeah, I think people had just been worried the other shoe was going to drop and that things have been so volatile in this Chiefs receiver core, but the shoe has not dropped. It's been a month now. I had him in the top 24 finally for week 15. Yeah, he's got to be in probably the top 18, maybe higher for week 16. I haven't done my initial ranking sweep yet, but totally agree with your analysis. Like, this is happening. This is for real for Rashee Rice. He's not Sky Moore 2.0. He probably already has more career receiving yards than Sky Moore. Not a joke.
Probably, yeah.
I think he probably does. And real quick, would you drop? We don't know this man's roster situation. Everyone's got different needs and concerns and wants during the playoffs. Would you drop Nico Collins for Rashee Rice today?
Yep, I'm going to have Rice ranked higher than Nico next week. Not that for most people, you probably shouldn't drop Nico, but in this one specific case, I don't know if Nico's playing, and even if he does play, I'm going to have Rice ranked higher next week.
Yeah, there was the first question we had tonight that I don't know if I quite understand. Happy holidays. Thank you very much, boring running back. If Allen, LV, which Allen is he talking about? Do you know? Very confused here because Josh Allen will be playing, of course, in week 16. It sounds like a receiver. Oh, Keenan Allen, of course. Keenan Allen plays this week. Can he start him? So Keenan Allen with Easton Stick against the Bills. Yeah. Can you start him over DJ Moore, Puka, and Mike Evans? Yes, basically Keenan Allen outlook with Mr. Easton Stick. And sorry, forgive our brain freeze on not remembering who Keenan Allen is.
Yeah, it wasn't just you. I had to look it up to. I mean, like the thing is, yeah. I mean, I had all of my Allen teams got dusted off this past week, so my brain was like, you don't need to remember him for another 8 months. So, I'd probably start DJ Moore over him. I'd probably start Puka over him.
I'd start DJ Moore over him for sure. I think I might jam him in there over Puka, just because they're both kind of running a similar PPR scam. Even with Josh Palmer back, they need Keenan Allen so bad. But I also kind of feel like they're not going to rush him back. I think he's probably just going to sit out again. That was my vibe on him, is that why in the world would they rush this 30-something-year-old receiver in a season in which I don't know if they've technically been eliminated, but obviously they're functionally eliminated. Why would they rush him back? And even if he does come back, is he playing a full route tree? I don't know. And on the other hand, this is the best version of Matthew Stafford and the Rams offense we've seen since like the best peak of their Super Bowl run. Like, there were times of their Super Bowl run where we were like, I'm pretty sure Matthew Stafford's chronic elbow injury is destroying him right now. Yeah. We are not seeing that at all. He looks like a stud right now. So I still think I'd take Puka. I think I'd take Evans too. I think give me one game, say Keenan Allen plays this week and gets 13 targets. You could probably throw him in over all of these guys. But I'm going to give him a 1-game probation before playing him over 3 locked-in top 15 receivers. That's fair. There are just a lot of variables there, too. I mean, this team, they don't have a coach. I guess I should also mention, like they don't have a quarterback. They don't have a coach. And those are all good enough guys. Those are good enough players where you can give them a probation week. You're not, like, trying to make some, like – you're not, like, playing Jonathan Mingo over him. I couldn't think of
exactly.
Yes. But yeah.
Yeah, you've given us 3 very good options. Otherwise, like Keenan's probably ranking as a top 16, 17 receiver in his first game back for me. You named 3 top 14 receivers for me.
So we're not trying to answer all questions from just one person, but 2 good ones back to back. Basically, Travis Etienne is struggling. Would you start Breece Hall over Travis Etienne either of the next 2 weeks? PPR league.
Probably not. Their workloads are similar. Etienne's is probably slightly better. Doesn't see as much receiving work, but that's mostly just a function of Breece Hall's quarterbacks having no ability to throw downfield. And that's emblematic of the fact that he will never get in the end zone because his quarterbacks cannot move the football. So I'll probably still take Etienne slightly.
Chad is here every single week. He's got a bit of a dynasty question. Keaton Mitchell tore his ACL. Dobbins is a free agent. Gus is also a free agent. Is Justice Hill worth stashing, or do we think the Ravens upgrade? Man, Justice Hill is like an undead zombie in dynasty leagues where he has hung around the end of rosters for several years. But the way Chad lays it out, it certainly seems like we're heading for a full-blown makeover of the Ravens backfield, does it not, Kyle?
I wouldn't be so surprised.
Gus will be back, I bet.
I think Justice is the one who leaves. Obviously, Keaton can't leave. He's under his rookie contract. Like UDFA contracts, I think, are 3 years, if I remember correctly. And is that right? Yeah.
They are, yes.
And J.K. Dobbins is a free agent, though. Didn't they give him a little bit of extra cash incentive in 2023? My guess is he returns this coming season, mostly because no team probably values him higher, given he's coming off an injury, than the Ravens right now. So I'm going to say Gus maybe comes back. JK definitely comes back. Keaton's obviously staying. I think Justice is maybe the odd man out, especially if they think Keaton Mitchell can play special teams. Certainly you could stash Justice Hill, but like we talked about how we're like, oh, Tucker Kraft is a really good stash in Dynasty. I think we mentioned that last week. There are probably one-off players. Dontavion Wicks is probably a good player that I would stash him where the talent upside is unknown versus Justice Hill, where I know what Justice Hill is. Maybe he returns for the Ravens next year and plays a mix of special teams and third downs, but there's zero upside to stashing Justice Hill. And if he lands on another team, it's probably to play third downs and special teams.
Zero untapped upside, zero unknowns with Justice Hill. Maybe not a more like well-defined player in football. Like the second levels is not going to come. Maybe he'll be back to the Ravens. Totally agree with you that it's not like you have to cut him in your dynasty league, but I am not prioritizing keeping Justice Hill in my dynasty leagues. Up 29.9 against Mr. Jalen Hurts, Mr. Jake Elliott. Is it Jover? Jalen Hurts, of course, playing through, it seems like a fairly nasty stomach bug. Hopefully he's got some fluids back in him by now. Is it Jover? It's in trouble, but I wouldn't say it's automatically over. What do you think?
No, I mean, you're probably favorite. I was going to guess like 61% favorite was my
literally
guess.
Had 61,
nice,
39
nice.
In my head, I think. I really do agree with that. So it's not Jover. The first quarter, Jalen Hurts scores a rushing touchdown. You might be catching his stomach flu.
Also, like you could have a very easy second half where you're very nervous after Jalen gets 17 and Elliott gets 6 in the first half, and they're playing against Drew Lock, and Drew Lock has 2 picks, 3 points on the board, and they run with the running backs every single play in the second half. So there's like a very obvious scenario in which game script gets out of hand in a good way for you, and that the Eagles just bury a understaffed Seahawks team.
My only thing tonight, Kyle, is I need DeAndre Swift to not Christian McCaffrey. I'm up by like 42 in my dynasty matchup with only. So as long as Mr. DeAndre Swift does not turn into Christian McCaffrey tonight, I'm advancing in my dynasty league.
I have 2 good outcomes. I have Ken Walker, Christian McCaffrey's, and I advance 1 high stakes team, DeAndre Swift, Christian McCaffrey's. So I need one of these things to happen, but realistically, neither of them are happening.
Really, really need Swift to not McCaffrey tonight. Chad mentioned the aforementioned Tucker Kraft. He thought he would end up being a big part of the offense when Musgrave returns with Christian Watson out. Jones always injured. Will they morph into a better Falcons 2 tight end offense? I kind of doubt no, but what do you think, Kyle?
Yeah, probably not. Think about how many times in our lives have we seen like 2 top 15 tight ends. I don't think Jonnu Smith is even going to get to top 15. Maybe he barely cracks it because he's played every game, but on a points per game basis, I'd be shocked if he does. So, I mean, it's literally just like Gronk Hernandez, right? Like I can't remember. Maybe there was a year where Ertz Goddard kind of got in that range.
They were close.
Even then, I'm like, oh, did they squeeze in tight end 13 and 15, right? The 2 tight end thing, as far as fantasy is concerned, just does not exist.
It really does not. The Packers' passing volume is not like bad, but it's not like elite. I just don't see the volume. 2 very good players. They could have like a decision on their hands, like who they really want to feature in 2024. But yeah, I totally agree with you that your outcome is probably not going to be the next Aaron Hernandez Gronk situation. Jerry seems Jerry's here almost every week too. Has Christian McCaffrey. Who should he pick up for the insurance bag? Elijah Mitchell, man. We know injury prone is like a controversial label. Elijah Mitchell, he gets hurt when he doesn't even play. Who should Jerry have as his contingency back? Elijah Mitchell or Jordan Mason?
I think it's Jordan Mason. I mean, Eli Mitchell is just not playing right now. And even when he comes back, like you said, he doesn't play and he still gets hurt. So I would think that right now, I don't know Eli Mitchell's future for week 16, 17, if you happen to play in week 18. I know Jordan Mason's healthy. And I think even if Eli Mitchell plays, how often he's got injured will dictate the fact that it's a committee. So you've got maybe 1B committee as the floor for Mason, but Mitchell doesn't play and Mason sees every touch as the ceiling.
So quick note, we're getting a lot of questions from the same people. We're going to answer a lot of those questions still. So thank you to our loyal viewers here asking a lot of questions. We are going to try to answer them. But if you're sitting as a wallflower during this broadcast, you think your question, a lot of people just don't like to ask their questions public, but it is the time to ask your question. We will answer any and every question tonight. In the meantime, we're getting a lot of good questions from Chad, a lot of good questions from Lynn Dorfins. Here's another from Chad. Who would you rather roster rest of season, Trey Sermon or Isaiah Spiller, who they tried to let him get the hot hand? He had like 16 carries when they were down by 49 points against the Raiders. But who would you rather roster for the final 4 weeks, 3 weeks?
Not even. I mean, it's two weeks, really.
2 of the playoffs, yes. So 3 of the regular season. Trey Sermon, Isaiah Spiller, Kyle.
Trey Sermon. I mean, I just don't think Isaiah Spiller's happening. Like, they'd have to shut down Eckler. Like, that's the scenario.
Might, though. They might.
I mean, he'd be a healthy scratch, though. Do you think they'll healthy scratch him?
No, and I don't know if they would. They might de facto shut him down, where they're just not featuring him, trying to keep him healthy heading into
even then, like, underdog 50% of the carries, Isaiah Spiller, like,
yeah,
who cares?
Yeah, it's true. There's no upside there with Isaiah Spiller. You are right.
Yeah, like if you want to say like Isaiah Spiller projects for an average of 8 touches per game for the rest of the season, and Trey Sermon probably projects for like 2, because there's a decent chance one of their backs comes back. In the average, maybe Isaiah Spiller beats him out, but we don't care about the average. We care about the outcomes in which you are starting one of these backs. You're not starting Isaiah Spiller this coming week. Unless Eckler immediately gets hurt, you're not starting him the next week. Trey Sermon, there is like maybe a 15% chance he's an RB2 for week 16, and that's the guy you want.
You made an important point at the end there, where the odds are low for both of them, but they are better for Trey Sermon. The Colts have everything to play for. We know the way they feature their running backs. Like if you're the lead back, you're getting 1 billion touches. Mm-hmm. So that is a good way to lay it out there. Is it Jover for Dalton Kincaid? He's zero balled, as you like to say, against the Cowboys. But Eric Samalski on our recap podcast made a fairly compelling argument that it's kind of a trash can game for the Bills, and the rare trash can game that results from them being so dominant. They were just so dominant on the ground. That could happen again, of course, against the Chargers Saturday night exclusively on Peacock, I might add. But how concerned were you about the 0 catch outing for Dalton Kincaid in a game where Josh Allen completed 7 passes, Kyle?
Oh my God, I didn't realize he completed that. Jesus Christ.
7 of 15. 7 of 15.
I mean, yeah, last week is not going to tell us a ton. His route rate was really low. I mean, it was one of the lowest we've seen. 68% is the second lowest in the past, like almost 2 months. But also they benched all their starters for the final drive. It wasn't a long drive, but it will at least depress the numbers a little bit. I will say every time Dawson Knox is out there, we've seen his numbers drop. We've seen it drop in the past 2 weeks. It's not as bad as it was early in the season, where he was legitimately just a number like 1B or 2 tight end at best. But I do think it's been beneficial for him when Dawson Knox is out, and we're kind of seeing that flip again. I'm going to have him ranked as a tight end 1, but 11 or 12, whereas like the difference between tight end 7 and almost 17, like, man, who cares? and then there's a tier where the top 5 tight ends are just dominating versus the rest, I'm probably not going to have him in that tier anymore.
Yeah, I don't see how you could. And it's so crazy. He was so effective. I mean, at least in fantasy, he was effective without Dawson Knox that it's hard to believe that they could just bring Dawson Knox back and immediately. He said it's not like the bad old days where it was the complete pre-injury role, but it was enough of it to make him way less effective, way less productive. And you just think teams that deploy players in the way where they're the most effective, but they don't do it. Lindorphins, is he correct? And starting Darren Waller against the Eagles in their pass funnel next week, or Kyle Pitts against the Indianapolis Colts. Kyle, what do you say?
I'm probably starting Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, wow, really? I was gonna say Waller, but
look, there's nothing wrong with benching Kyle Pitts. Like, you've really not lost that much money this year by benching Kyle Pitts. He's still seen a lot of targets, I guess, percentage-wise, not literally.
I'll say too, the Colts game, this could be one of the sneaky shootouts of the week. Kyle Pitts. Here's the deal with Darren Waller versus Kyle Pitts, I guess. You're trying to win a championship in the playoffs. You're going for broke every week in the playoffs. You really do have to shoot for the moon. Is Darren Waller really going to flip a matchup? Probably not. Kyle Pitts could flip a matchup. His floor is a little lower than Darren Waller, but I don't think Darren Waller's floor is that much higher. And I just don't see the matchup flipping ability with Darren Waller. Or as frustrating as Kyle Pitts is, it probably still is matchup. So if he scores a 32-yard touchdown, your matchup might be flipped.
Last week Darren Waller ran a route on less than half of his team's dropbacks. Do we expect that to grow? Obviously. But does it grow to 55% or to 60% or to 90%? We just don't know. So like you said, the floor remains he's a part-time player on an offense led by concussed Tommy DeVito.
Wow, when you put it that way. So is he concussed, by the way? Did they?
No, I mean he
was in the protocol. He looked concussed as hell. I'll say. I could have sworn.
That's what I'm saying is he's definitely concussed. Is he going to play? Probably, but remember when we saw TJ Watt huffing smelling salts to get back in the game?
Man, last night, by the way, Trevor Lawrence was the most obvious concussion ever. His head did that horrible basketball thing, it bounced off the turf. They let him finish the game. I thought, man, he's probably concussed. And of course he was.
And immediately enters the concussion protocol.
I feel like they're backsliding on this concussion stuff. They actually did get pretty serious about it for several years. I have felt like some backsliding on the concussion front the past year or two, though.
Yeah, there's just some leaks where oh my God, obviously this guy, the Tua thing we saw last year.
Well, the TJ Watt thing, he was so clearly concussed.
I mean,
it was back to the Premier League, he's rubbing some dirt on it. And the Premier League, as long as you can walk straight, they let you stay in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And the NFL is backsliding a little bit. We have a defensive question from Jorge. Miami D has been killing it. That is true. Do we keep playing them, or do we play the Eagles? We're just going to focus on Week 16. Week 16, Miami plays the Cowboys, Kyle, and the Eagles play the Giants. Is the Dolphins are a better fantasy defense right now than the Eagles? But yeah, I feel like you have to play the Eagles against the Giants. Correct.
100%. You play the Tommy DeVito sack printing machine 10 times out of 10, even though the Eagles have been dreadful this year. There is no reason in terms of previous performance to play the Eagles defense over Miami. But at the end of the day, the opposing quarterback controls so much of how your fantasy defense scores. Tommy DeVito is giving you a lot of sacks.
Jorge, by the way, you're dropping the Dolphins because then in Week 17 they're playing the Ravens. Week 17 and Week 17 the Eagles are playing the Cardinals. The schedules don't even compare. Yeah, the schedules do not even compare. That's a weird question from Chad, but I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just it's Week 16. Why are we talking about Nick Mullins? It's because it's Week 16 and things are just crazy.
I was one quarterback away from putting him in the waiver wire column, but I couldn't do it.
No, I'm saying we have to talk about him. I will say it's not the highest total of the week. It's the second highest total of the week right now. I double checked. Can you possibly stream Nick Mullins against just a brutally bad Lions pass defense? One that showed up against Russell Wilson. I guess Nick Mullins, of course, is a good matchup. But does Nick Mullins for you have any streamer juice for the fantasy semifinal? Any QB2 juice for the fantasy semis?
Yeah, probably QB2 juice. I mean, I had him. I didn't end up writing him up because I figured I probably just needed to list 2 quarterbacks under 50%, but he probably would have been my third guy. I had Derek Carr and Jake Browning as the top 2 ads. It would have been him as the third ad, but probably as somewhere in the QB 18 to 20 range. range, 18 to 22 range, which is QB2, right? There are leagues where he is the top streaming option, though I don't think that's a majority of leagues.
That's a pretty good breakdown to me. Lindorfin's one more question. He says, defense next week, Jets, who are hurting, like their season's over. It's a great matchup, of course, in the Commanders. Or do we play the Chiefs against the Raiders offense that has scored 63 points? What say you, Kyle?
I think we take assuming it's Sam Howell. I think it's already been said it's Sam Howell. The dropbacks and sack machine. Like you give 40 dropbacks to this Jets defense, even unmotivated. Like obviously they have nothing, in terms of their season left to play for. You give them 40 dropbacks. I think they're getting 5+ sacks and 2+ turnovers.
Yeah, real quick, by the way, I swear we're going to I thought the same thing. Marvin Harrison hasn't opted out yet. I don't know what he's waiting for, but he needs to opt out real bad. He should not be playing my Mizzou Tigers in the Cotton Bowl Classic on December 29th. We need Marvin Harrison to opt out. Like, whoa. So I do not think he's opted out yet.
No, you're right. I just Googled it. The most recent article 10 times in a row is undecided. I'd be shocked if he plays. But you're right. He hasn't opted out yet.
He's not. He's not risking his ACL against the Missouri.
No. I sent my friends some tweets that are very drastic as someone who tanked in Dynasty to get, I'm like, oh, I'm a 500 team. Dude, I'm not winning. Give me all the Marvin Harrison. If he does not enter the draft, which again, another unlikely thing, I'm in trouble. I have some debts to pay.
Well, you better hope there's not a Columbus car dealership that's paying him like $1 million for one last.
No, they're going to try. Trust me, the Columbus car dealership collective is bringing it together to get him.
I totally believe it. Boring running back. Seeing it's the last Q&A. PPR keeper league. Kyron Williams or Puka Nacua. Pretty fascinating question. I recently tried to trade for Kyron Williams for Mr. Pat Crane. He would not give him up. What do you think, Kyle?
In Dynasty?
I offered him. I went and looked at his Dynasty rankings. He had Jameson Williams and Kyron Williams back to back.
Oh,
I wonder if he's still a big JMO believer, and he's not.
He's just not updated his Dynasty.
No, he still likes somebody. He said he's been meaning to update and drop Jameson Williams a little bit. Kyron Williams at those running back touches, or Puka Nacua, who will probably have a longer shelf life in Dynasty.
Yeah, I think the answer is Puka, mostly because we know both these guys are talented, to be clear. We know both of them are probably extremely talented, but the shelf life on running backs is so much shorter, and the ability to translate talent into fantasy production is much more limited at running back. If for whatever reason, and we see this all the time, which is why I'm saying for whatever reason, if the Rams spend a 3rd-round pick on running back, that could just be it for Kyron. I mean, we've seen it with Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker was great last year, and now he's a committee back with Zach Charbonnet. So I think, to me, Puka has so much more control over his future fantasy production, and he's really good, whereas Kyron is really good, but just it's harder for a running back to control their future fantasy production. That I will take Puka in this sense.
Kyron also has a bit of an injury history at this point, and Sean McVay is like very, what's the word? It starts with an I. He's very impulsive with his running backs. Like he could just like immediately fall in love with someone else next year. And he like seriously like is like whiplash with the running backs. So I'm happy if I have Kyron Williams in Dynasty, but I would definitely be happier to have Puka Nacua in Dynasty. Like you said, Ben wondering, how, are we stashing Keaton Mitchell? Undersized scat back who now has a torn ACL on his resume. They're already kind of maxing him out in the 9 to 12 touch range. Maybe he could have had room to grow. But he seems like he's typecast as like the change of pace type. How much of a must hold are you considering him in Dynasty?
Oh, I mean, he's 100% a hold because, like the previous question talked about, J.K. Dobbins, free agent, Gus Edwards, I believe, and maybe Justice Hill. So one of those two is a free agent as well. Also, they're as much as Gus has saved some of my fantasy teams, they're mostly just a guys, whereas Keaton could be much more than that. So 100% he's a hold. I mean, we might not see him till midway through next season, which is going to be frustrating. But the upside in terms of his dynasty value is still really high.
What I'd say about Keaton Mitchell in Dynasty, he should definitely be on your roster still. I do think he was already trending towards getting typecast as the 3rd down change of pace back. And then having the serious injury in his resume, I do think it's probably capped his career upside. Where pretty valuable to have a change of pace 3rd down guy like that around in Dynasty. I don't know if I'd really expect more from Keaton Mitchell.
Sure.
I'm going forward in his career. Jake from State Farm. Would you rather roll with Kyler, Stroud or pick up Flacco for QB? Let me see here, Kyle. Cardinals play the Bears this week. The Texans play the Browns. And who is the third option?
Flacco.
Oh, yeah, Flacco. So Stroud and Flacco are playing each other. Kyler is playing the Eagles. Who are you rolling with at quarterback for week 16? Oh, no, it's not the Eagles. Excuse me. Kyler is playing the Bears. Sorry.
Yeah. I still think I'm going to take Stroud. Like, he is just by far and away the best of these three quarterbacks. Like, Kyler can give you some rushing, but I still think we're yet to really see him reach his potential as a thrower in this season. And Joe Flacco is Joe Flacco. Like, he's been solid, but like obviously the turnovers are sort of indicative of he is who he is at this point. CJ Stroud is a top 12, 10 quarterback in the NFL. And that's sort of regressing him to the fact that like, we don't know, we've only seen, 15 games. We could look back in 3 years and say he was probably a top 8, top 6 quarterback from the moment he stepped on the field. So just give me the best quarterback.
Yeah, even without Tank Dell, I pretty safely am taking CJ Stroud there. I totally agree with your assessment that he is that good. Jake from State Farm, another question. We're going to try to establish the Darren Waller line. Taysom Hill,
this is a good one too.
A calamitous week 15. 0 for 1 as a passer, 1 ineffective rush, 1 ineffective catch. Do we stick with his upside, or you try to get some PPR floor certainty in there with Darren Waller?
I think this might be the point in which I go PPR floor certainty with Darren Waller, and that like a 0 from Taysom Hill is maybe the end of your fantasy season, in which like, yeah, I think it's skeptical that we see more than 7 targets for Darren Waller. The floor is 0 for Taysom Hill, so I'll probably still go with Darren Waller. I think I'm going to have Taysom Hill ranked as like the tight end 16 this coming week. Still playable, but highly risky, whereas I'll probably have Darren Waller ranked as tight end 13, just outside of the top 12. And I think previously the question was Kyle Pitts. I'll probably have him ranked as tight end 11. They're going to be staggered in that none of them are great plays. But if you're making me order them, it's Waller over Hill and barely Kyle Pitts over Waller.
Taysom is a weird one. It's also a short week. And I just don't know if he's like fully healthy still. I wish that they had a full week for Taysom to get healthier. And they play the Rams on Thursday night. I'm still tempted to say the matchup flipping. Darren Waller's not flipping a matchup, but like you said, Taysom Hill actually could cost you a matchup. You could survive 3 catches for 32 yards from a tight end in a PPR league. You can't really survive 0, which is the floor with Taysom Hill. So I think I do agree there. We got Chad. He's wondering Taysom Hill being usurped. I would say he's been fully usurped. He's getting usurped on some of the very, very valuable goal line.
Yeah.
Right,
Live
Chad,
long enough to become the villain type of thing
it's
with
true.
Taysom Hill. Some complete rando taking touchdowns from Taysom Hill.
Chad is up by 17 in an expert steal league. He's playing the Eagles defense and Jake Elliott. He's probably going to win, but he could lose. I'd say 72-28 he's going to win. What do you think?
I'm going to go lower, 66 and 34, I think is the other end of that. In that he is facing a defense that gets Drew Lock, which...
So is it officially Drew Lock, by the way?
I mean, I think we're about 10 minutes out from inactives, but there was a report that Gino is like highly unlikely to play. And it's been trending all that way. There's been no sort of semblance of, he got better this morning. So I'd put it at like 90-10 that it's Drew Lock, and we'll find out in 10-ish minutes.
We will find out in 10 minutes. Yeah, you really need Drew Lock to not 6 of any kind, and he probably will. Whether it's fumble, interception, maybe multiple times, Drew Lock he's going to 6. Lindor's wondering, how are the schedule? I don't know. All I know is we're not doing our show. I'll say that. I'm not sure what Matthew and the gang are up to. I bet Denny will for sure still do his chat next Friday. All I know is that Kyle and I won't be here on Monday for obvious reasons.
The preview shows will still be going. They might be a day early. They actually will probably just be the same day, right?
The podcast schedule will remain the same next week.
Yeah, I was going to say there's no reason like, Christmas is all the way into the next week. So yeah, the preview shows will for the next 2 weeks be Thursdays as usual.
The recap show though is not happening on Christmas, we must say, because we gotta have a holiday. We gotta have a holiday. What is up? What's up, Pee Wee? We don't actually have any new questions right now. Time to get in your questions. How does the bad year for quarterbacks change drafting? And I don't know. seen anything to change. They've definitely become more valuable. We hit like 5 or 6 years ago. They were almost to the point where they were like truly interchangeable. There was no
difference between good and bad things.
There really was no difference,
but like
between,
unironically,
there was truly no difference between taking a quarterback in the 5th round and the 16th round. That is definitely no longer the case. But I also feel like we're probably at the peak of this era of quarterbacks mattering, and the player pool's got to deepen again at some point. But what do you think? Is it going to be an early quarterback year next year, Kyle?
I mean, I think ADP will absolutely push up. I'm not sure there's much more room for like the Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen group to grow, but I do think maybe the middle rounds will start to push up as people seek the safety of like the QB 6 or 7. But you've got to understand, this was probably somewhere in the range of a 5th percentile outcome for QBs 6 to 16. I mean, Rodgers, Richardson, Cousin, Geno, Deshaun, Trevor Lawrence playing through injuries. I'm probably missing 1 or 2. I mean, Justin Fields missed some games as well.
Even Daniel Jones,
no, absolutely. Daniel Jones put up like 800 rushing yards last year. Even if he sucks, he gives you the QB 14 type of numbers. That's another one that I was missing. So many quarterbacks, QB 6 through 16 and beyond, gave you nothing. They ended your fantasy season, and for that to happen, I mean, I think Tua and Trevor are the only ones to survive that run. That's extremely unlikely. And I think people will overreact to that by pushing up the QB 1 through 5 or so.
That makes a lot of sense to me, actually, because it can't possibly, I mean, knock on wood, quarterbacks are usually one of the more stable positions in terms of injury. Yep. And I just don't think it could possibly be.
Even then, QB 4, 5, and 6 also did terribly in the sense of Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow are somewhere in that range.
Did they ever? I had another thought to add there, but I forgot what it was. So I can't. Morning running back. Can't wait to take Baker Mayfield in the 5th next year. So Kyle and I talked about Baker Mayfield on our recap show this week, by the way, in case you didn't listen. Brett Lasser wondering, James Cook coming off a career game looking like Dalvin Cook against the Dallas Cowboys. He's a top what running back in PPR in 2024?
I'm going to say he is a top 8 running back, and people probably draft him more like he's a top 5 running back. I think he's maybe a little overdrafted.
You think? I was wondering, I was going to say only top 12. That I think people might be a little hesitant on him because I don't know if he'll be like a 20 carry player still down the stretch this season. Like the Bills will probably draft someone else because they should.
We'll see.
They need like another day 2 or 3 running back, not day 2, day 3 running back. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, man. He looks like he can just do the Dalvin Cook thing. Like he really does look like he can just be the next Dalvin Cook, and that he should definitely probably be in the top 8 and even top 5. Yeah, he probably will get a little overdrafted, but I think we're both in agreement. No way he'll be outside the top 10 in terms of ADP. He's going to be not at all. He's going to have a very, very high ADP. If he wins, Singletary or Javonte in week 16, Singletary has the Cleveland Browns. Yikes. Javonte, I think, is a better matchup. No, not really. It's the New England Patriots on Christmas Eve night. What a horrid game.
I'm going to say, though, the Broncos is, if it's home or away.
The Broncos, I believe it's in Boston. I'm checking right now. Nope, it's in Denver.
Yeah, Broncos have to be like 4-point favorites in that game if I had to guess, because they're a better team than the Patriots, and they're at home.
They are 6 right now.
6-point favorites. I mean, 6-point favorite Javonte is really good. I wrote this up in start sits, and Javonte has pretty much struggled to be even an RB3 in his in the games in which his team loses. And it's not a surprise. He plays 2 and maybe a half downs, you could call it, but in the 2-minute drill and passing downs, he doesn't play. And when they're favorites and they end up winning, he goes on to see a bunch of carries, and he's generally efficient. So I'm going to say Javonte as a home favorite against a completely dead team is where I'll go here.
That makes a lot of sense. And 2, I just feel like we could get a rug pull at any moment with the Texans.
100%.
And then maybe the approach was just for some reason different without Stroud. And when Stroud's in, we like a committee better for reasons that we can't really articulate. And I just don't feel like we ever have seen the end of the story with that Texans backfield. E-Man B. Hill has a start set for this week. David Njoku, Isaiah Likely are both cooking. David Njoku's targets floor is just shockingly high, though. Who do you say B. Hill should be starting this week?
Yeah, I can look it up right now. I haven't seen Njoku's volume this week, but the thing is, when they've had over the
Maybe
past
he had
few
16 targets, I believe. I'm not kidding.
Shut up.
I'm
Come
pretty
on.
sure he had 16 targets yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah, PFF has him with 14, so maybe 2 of them were like throwaways. Oh my god, 14 targets.
It's been adjusted down to 14 too on ESPN, so it is 14
okay, yeah.
officially.
14's so nuts though. 14's incredible. And on top of that, the point I was going to say is that early in the year, his target depth was sub 4. Like he was truly being used in the range of the field that a running back is being used. And as many targets as you see, that's not the most useful. In recent weeks, they've had a legitimate NFL offense, and his target depth is up to 6 or 7, which is like 1.5 times what it was, on top of his target share growing. So to me, David Njoku might be, I talked about earlier, tight ends who like really separate from the pack, top 5 tight ends. He deserves some credit for the past 5 weeks of being one of those, like, he separates himself as an every week tight end one with a 25 to 30 point ceiling, which like 5 tight ends in the NFL have. I think it's Njoku, and I think it's not close, and that's not an indictment of likely.
Yeah, Njoku's got a really nice target floor at this point. Like he's actually a ceiling. Pretty rare for both those to exist in one tight end.
Yeah.
It's because like even George Kittle, who has weak winning ceiling, doesn't have a floor. So for David Njoku to have both, it's quite. We've got breaking news here from Chad. Gino is playing.
Seriously?
So can he survive facing the Eagles defense and Jake Elliott? What do you think?
I mean, you can still survive.
Gino can still uncork a 6 pretty easily.
My guess is that they play super run heavy with Gino like barely alive.
Gino seems, in your words, giga hurt. Like should not be
nuclear Chernobyl levels of hurt.
He is very hurt. What is your early feel on Jonathan Taylor for Week 16? I know you would like to know. I would very much like to know. KD also wants to know.
Yeah, I have confirmed Gino is at least active and is playing. Yep, Rappaport said specifically playing. Jonathan Taylor, my vague vibe was that he has one more week to play. The initial report was 2 to 3, then we got a 3 to 5. Ooh. To me, the average of that sounds like about 3 to 3.5 games. I kind of don't think he plays. However, if he does, I'm going to play him over Austin Eckler.
I am too. I just think the fact that they won last week, I don't know if they won last week makes it more or less likely that he sits.
I feel like it makes it more likely that he plays.
I think it does make it more like, because it's all there for them to take. And I do think they might rush him back. Running back with the thumb seems like a bad idea. But my initial feel is that he's probably going to play, but just keep it locked to the injury reports. Keep it locked to rotoworld.com. Elisha here almost every week, half PPR. If Keenan is out, flex James Conner, Javonte Amari. This guy has some really good bench options.
Who do we say the Browns play this week?
They play the Texans, I believe.
Oh, that should be a good game. I kind of feel like my answer is Amari there. But between Javonte and Amari, I think for me, I think Connor's role is probably similar to Javonte, but it's not going to be a better spot than playing the nearly worst team in NFL, New England Patriots, at home, or Amari, who sees all the targets on an offense that actually works right now. So do you have a lean here? Javonte or Amari for me?
Probably Amari against that Texans defense. And just with Joe Flacco, seriously, it's 45 attempts every single week. And I feel like the Broncos are weirdly pass heavy in the red zone. I know there's data that we could actually look up, but it seems like they're just throwing to Cortland Sutton in the red zone every single time. And Javonte Williams, I think he has 1 rushing touchdown all year. You could say he's probably due for some giga positive regression, but I don't know if I'm really banking on that for the fantasy semifinals. And I probably would get Amari Cooper in there. I think Browns Texans is going to be like a shootout. And there's so many targets to go around with Joe Flacco under center. Which government agency do I have to contact to get rid of? So I'm assuming he lost for like what, -2, -4 points on that Jay Fields interception. That was bad. Weren't both of his interceptions on Hail Marys? Didn't you inform me of that, Kyle?
I did not inform you of that, but that is true that his first one was at a halftime, like we're at a 48 or whatever. We can't kick a field goal. We'll throw it up. Interception, obviously. And then the Darnell Mooney Mount Rushmore of freeze frame, ball in hands. This was not a catch. This was an interception, in fact. Mount Rushmore of that type of play. which Kadarius Toney has like 2 plays on that one.
He does.
On that Mount Rushmore. And not only that, but he also had the Robert Tonyan wide open touchdown, and Tonyan circus juggles it. Yeah, man. ATF. I'm going to say alcohol, tobacco, firearms.
It was a rough day for those Fields managers. Matt C. here at the end. Start Calvin Ridley, who is just tilting me out of my absolute gourd. The zero ball specialist, Gabe Davis. Marquise Brown. Marquise Brown didn't play the second half yesterday, or Keenan Allen if he returns. I think there's an obvious answer here, but I'm wondering if you think the same thing, Kyle.
Keenan Allen if he returns. I don't know how likely that is. And Calvin Ridley, if not. That's
Sadly,
like the very obvious pecking order for me.
It is. I mean, as frustrating as Calvin Ridley has been, I mean, Gabe Davis is making a specialty of catching 0 passes. So
I think 3 of the past 4 weeks he's had 0. If not, it's close. Yeah.
It's like 4 of the past 6. It's something totally crazy.
19 of the past 20. Let's just keep going.
Gabe Davis has 0 catches this year. Should probably stop ranking him as a wide receiver 4. That's wow. I thought I was checking his box scores every week. Yeah, 0 catches on the 2023 season. Anyone have any final questions before we speak of bring a wrap to the 2023 waiver wire chat season? I'm feeling marble mouth tonight, Kyle. I'm having trouble talking. Chad is a betting question. I'm not a betting expert. I don't know if Kyle is either. With Geno and Hurts nowhere near 100%, would you guys bet the under, or do the ground games cover it? Okay, that's kind of betting question we can answer. I don't. What do you? Let me look. What's the weather like tonight? Not that it really matters. It's 46 and a half. The under feels like it's smashing. But and 46 and a half, but that's just my gut feel answer. What do you think, Kyle?
I mean, my gut says the under, but also an hour and 25, I think, minutes until kickoff probably means there's no value to be had. I do think, though, I guess the line probably continues to move under. If you want to get closing line value, I don't know how valuable this specific cleave is. Under is probably the move.
It's probably the move. It is. The last time Geno played, he went totally nuclear against the Cowboys. This is a horrible Eagles pass team, but you and I, neither one of us have much faith in Geno's health, though. He seems very, very, very banged up.
I mean, even Hurts, quote, health in that, like...
Hurts is not in a good... Even before the stomach bug, man, he's been, like, limping around on that knee.
Also, yeah, the knee, yeah.
I guess that's it. I guess we're done. It's kind of sad, but we're done for tonight. We're done for the season on the waiver wire chat. We've made it 16 weeks. Seems absolutely unbelievable. Feel like we just started. Kyle's going to keep the waiver wire going the rest of the season, though. I'm going to keep the rankings going, of course, the rest of the season. Happy holidays to everyone. We hope you're doing quite well in the fantasy play. If you're here, kind of by definition, you probably survived and are still playing into week 16. We hope you're playing into week 17. Keep it locked to Rotoworld.com. Injury updates all week, even during the holidays this weekend. Christmas Day, we're going to be getting game blurbs up on everything. So keep it locked to the website. For Kyle, I'm Pat. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll catch you next year.